In a small town called Cato, there lived a little girl named Ada. She was just 7 years old and lived with her parents, Mr. Emeka and her mother, Nika. Ada was a very beautiful girl who had a beautiful smile, but unfortunately, she never got to smile because she was not happy in her own parents. It all began one day when Ada was in her room and her father, Mr. Emeka, walked in. He said to her, "Ada, I want to show you what it means to be a woman, but you must not tell anybody. It is a secret. Make sure you don't tell anyone." Little Ada did not know what her father meant, but she trusted him. Of course, it was her father, and she trusted whatever her father said. Mr. Emeka started having intimacy with his 7-year-old daughter. He forced himself on the little girl, and she would always cry, shouting, "Daddy, please stop. Daddy, it's paining me. Daddy, it's scary." But Mr. Emeka would not listen. Ada didn't understand what was happening. She only felt a sharp pain down below that scared her and hurt her. She ran away most times, but Mr. Emeka would always catch her. At 7 years old, Ada was traumatized. You must be wondering where Mrs. Nika, her mother, had been while this was going on. Stick with me through this story. Mrs. Nika owned a very big shop in the city. She owned the biggest fabric shop in the city, where everyone came to buy from her at wholesale prices. She was always in her shop, so into her business that she never cared to know what was happening in her home. Mr. Emeka, on the other hand, was a man who worked from home, creating websites for companies. So, he had the time to commit the atrocities he was committing because he was always at home alone with his daughter, Ada. One day, Mrs. Nika was sitting at the dining table, calculating and counting money, as usual. That was all she cared about. Then Ada walked up to her and said, "Mommy, why does Daddy hurt me when you are not around?" Ada's voice was small and trembling, but her mother, Nika, didn't even look up from the pile of papers spread across the dining table. Nika was a very business-oriented woman, always focused on her shop and money. Nothing else mattered. She responded to Ada's question, "Ada, please, not now," flipping through her ledger. Her attention was fixed on the numbers. "Can't you see that I'm busy? You know how hard I work to make sure we have enough. Just go and do your homework." "But, Mom," Ada said again, her voice cracking as she stood there, clutching the hem of her shirt, desperate for someone to listen to her. "Ada, I said I am busy," Nika snapped, finally looking up, her eyes flashing with impatience. "You always bring up silly things when I'm trying to work. Go to your room." Ada swallowed hard, her words dying in her throat. She wanted to scream, to beg her mother to hear her, but she knew it was pointless. Her mother never listened, never seemed to care about anything but the shop. So Ada turned quietly and went to her room, her heart heavy with a secret she was forced to carry alone. Mr. Emeka continued to sneak into Ada's room every night, and whenever Mrs. Nika went to the shop, he always had his way with his daughter. He would always tell Ada to keep it a secret, that he was only trying to make her feel like a woman. And Ada would always say, "Daddy, but it is always painful. I don't like it. I'm going to tell Mommy." And the father would always shout at Ada, "If you tell anybody, you will die." "Do you want to die?" Out of fear, innocent Ada would say no, and she would keep it to herself. But deep down, she needed someone to talk to. She needed attention. She needed someone to express her pains and feelings too. Oh, dear Ada. She wanted to talk to her mother, but her mother never gave her a listening ear. It was as if she was all alone in the world. Her father, who was supposed to be protecting her, was committing all of this with her, and her mother, who was supposed to be her guardian angel, was never available for her. One evening, Ada was sitting on the staircase, crying, her eyes swollen. She had gone to her mother again, hoping, praying that this time Nika would listen. But it had ended like all the other times. "Mom, can I talk to you?" "It's about Daddy," Ada had whispered, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table where Nika was counting her money. Nika didn't even look up. What is it now, Ada? You are always complaining about something. Ada's heart pounded in her chest. It's about what Daddy does when you are not home. She couldn't bring herself to say it. The words felt like they would burn her throat. Ada, I don't have time for this, Nika said sharply, slamming the pile of cash down on the table. You are always making up stories. Daddy works hard to take care of us, and you're just trying to cause trouble, you little brat. But, Mom, please, Ada's voice broke, tears streaming down her face as she begged her mother to listen. I said enough, Nika yelled, her patience snapping. If you're not happy here, maybe you should go live somewhere else. Stop being so dramatic. You're just trying to get attention. Ada was stunned into silence. She felt the walls of her world closing in on her. No matter how hard she tried, her mother always shut her down. No matter how much she cried, Nika never believed her. The one person who was supposed to protect her couldn't even see her pain. The next morning, Ada sat at the breakfast table, her eyes dull and lifeless. Nika was already dressed for the day, her bag packed with order slips and money. Make sure you behave today, Ada, Nika said, kissing the top of her head absently, not even noticing the tears brimming in her daughter's eyes. I have to meet an important client. As soon as Nika left the house, Mr. Emeka's mood changed. He smiled at Ada in a way that made her skin crawl. The man was a monster hiding in plain sight. Weeks went by and the same pattern continued. Ada tried to tell her mother again and again, but Nika was too consumed by her business. She always dismissed Ada's cries for help, calling her dramatic or too sensitive. Every time Ada tried to speak up, Nika would say things like, "Don't you see how hard I'm working? You are lucky to have a roof over your head. Ada, stop making up stories." Ada gave up after a while. She stopped trying to talk to her mother, stopped hoping that anyone would save her. She retreated into herself, becoming quieter, her laughter fading into silence. Silence became her only friend, until one day, Nika finally caught a glimpse of the truth. She returned home early from work, something she never did, and found Mr. Emeka in Ada's room, doing the very thing Ada had tried to warn her about. She met her husband, Mr. Emeka, having intimacy with her 7-year-old daughter. Nika's world crumbled in an instant. She screamed, pushing Mr. Emeka away and cradling Ada in her arms. For the first time, she realized what her daughter had been trying to tell her all along. Nika called the authorities, and Mr. Emeka was taken away. In his defense, he said Nika was not always available for him. Nika was always busy with her business, and he needed companionship. Can you imagine the defense? Dear viewers, is that an excuse? Anyway, Ada was taken for counseling, where she slowly began to heal from the trauma she had endured for so long. Nika, racked with guilt, quit her job and dedicated herself to rebuilding her relationship with her daughter. She had learned the hard way that money and business couldn't replace the love and care a child needs. As for Mr. Emeka, the monster father, he was sentenced to life in prison, where he spent the rest of his days.